We're here again to talk about gangs and guns and the violence that they cause throughout Brooklyn. I remain fully committed, working with our police department to find these perpetrators of gun violence and hold them accountable so we can prevent more gang violence from happening in our county. This is a historical indictment we're about to announce, going back and solving past shootings. Much of these gang members are involved in the violence that we all read about, we all experience, and the kind of violence that causes families to be afraid to let their children go out in the evenings. Today we announced the indictment of 32 women and men who were responsible for 24 violent incidents, with 13 people being injured, one critically wounded, and ultimately someone who passed away from gunshot wounds. Also, 3 innocent bystanders were shot as a result of this gun violence. During the course of this investigation, we believe 32 firearms were used or possessed by these gang members. You see a number of them here on the table. About 20 of them are here today. This is really, quite honestly, a continuation of the type of gang violence we're seeing in our county, where 2 gangs join together to become more prominent, to have more geographical dominance, and really, quite frankly, to have more access to these deadly firearms. The main gang involved in this case today are the A-Tray Crips. They're there, and there you'll see them on the board. In the top center, sort of in the black shadow, you'll see Michael Williams. Now, many of you are familiar with Michael Williams because he's a fairly successful musician. He rap music. He's in the center. To his left, you'll see another person named Tegan Chambers. Tegan is known as Sleepy Hollow. He's also a rapper of prominence. Sheff G became, Michael Williams is also known as Sheff G. He became a prominent member of this gang and became central to our investigation, quite frankly, as his music career continued to shine. He established a record label, ultimately joining with Tegan Chambers. That record label had a deal with RCA Records, which is owned by Sony Music. And quite honestly, if you ask your children if they're listening to these guys, you'll hear Sheff G and Tegan Chambers, Sleepy Hollow on their playlist. So these are fairly prominent musicians. What we allege and what we learned during the course of this investigation is that Sheff G used a lot of the money that he earned to help facilitate further gang activity. He encouraged gang members to participate in violent crimes. We'll talk more about Sheff G in a few minutes, but before I do that, let's talk about the other members that joined with the A-Trays. I see the second faceboard. Those are 9-way gang members. It's another crew that joined together. And together, this crew formed an alliance. This alliance waged war against their mutual enemies, the notorious Folk Nation gang and the ICG Babies. Let's see a map. It's a map of central to southern Brooklyn. What you'll see is the different geographic areas where these gangs operated out of. And so what you see is that this really contained a large swath of Brooklyn, from central Brooklyn down to southern Brooklyn, really from Prospect Lefferts Gardens all the way into Flatbush, into East Flatbush, down to Canarsie and into Brownsville. And so you can see where they operated out of. As these gangs create this geographic dominance, as they continue to expand their territories, they were more conflicts and more rivalries happen. And so we're starting to see this happening. These gangs are joining together to become more powerful, and as a result, we're all a lot less safe. Now, before we talk about one of the serious incidents covered by this indictment, part of what's happening in these cases is that social media beefs and taunts continue to happen. In this particular case, we allege that Sheff G, Michael Williams, was engaged in social media taunts with another rapper who belongs to the Folk Nation gang. Those taunts became serious and acted upon, and it's a pattern of encouragement that we've seen through the social media postings and some of the texts that were obtained during the investigation. There's a shooting that took place in October of 2020, and that shooting is classified as a mass shooting. The lead up to that mass shooting started about a week earlier, where Sheff G was engaged in taunts with this Folk Nation rapper. And during that incident, it was decided that the Folk Nation headquarters, where they hung out on Hawthorne Street, would be targeted. As a result of that targeting, 6 people were shot, one of them fatally shot. In the video you're about to see, you're going to see a stolen white Infiniti drive up the block, back into a parking driveway, and then you will see a person pop out of the sunroof, the open sunroof, start shooting. There'll be also people shooting from the driver's side windows. In total, we estimate over 30 shots were fired. You'll see there are a number of people across the street that they're shooting at, including men and women. And then you'll see something that will show you how dangerous and coordinated these attacks are. You'll see a second vehicle that's also stolen. It was an SUV that was used as a blocker vehicle to block the police or block anyone from following the shooting car. And you'll see that the blocker vehicle, as the shooting begins, blocks the intersection and allows the shooting car to escape, driving the wrong way up a one-way street onto traffic where it's been sort of cordoned off for them to escape. One of the people identified and charged with the murder in this case is that man, Commandre Dekatu. He is a member of the A-Tray gang, and if you see prominently on his neck, he has the symbol of his gang, an 8 and a 3. Let's play this video. Okay, that is the vehicle. You'll see the vehicle now reverse into this driveway. And we're going to see this from 2 different angles. And now out the sunroof and out the windows, 3 gunmen are firing. This car goes up the one-way street in the wrong direction. All right, here's another angle. By the way, this car was stolen and the license plates were changed. There's the blocker car, the SUV. It's now going to cut off the intersection to allow the car that's going to commit the shooting to escape, coming up the wrong-way street. And then it immediately follows. Across the street, you see a lot of people hanging out. The shooting vehicle is going to be all the way to the far left of the video. You won't be able to see that clearly, but you'll see the people running. And if you see closely, you'll see the vehicle turning in the opposite direction and fleeing. If you're watching, you'll be able to see a man who gets shot right there fall to the ground. Fortunately, that person survived the shooting. Pure mayhem, women and men. There was a female victim of that shooting as well. Again, pure mayhem. A 23-year-old man named Theodore Sr. was fatally killed during the shooting. I've already said 5 other people were wounded, some with serious injuries to their bodies. Defendant Dekatu is charged with murder, as well as his co-conspirators, including in the conspiracy is Sheff G and his sister, Crystal Williams. They are charged with conspiracy to commit murder for these shootings, as well as for their roles in encouraging other shootings. Specifically, before this homicide took place, there are messaging that we allege Crystal Williams sent to her brother, Sheff G, who told her brother that that one of the main Folk Nation members had to get hit or killed, and only after 1 hour after this shooting, Michael Williams, aka Sheff G, is communicating with a trusted gang member, and he's asking if the A-Trays had scored, and he's asking for proof of that score to be sent to him by screenshots. Just a few days later, Sheff G takes the shooters from this incident and some other gang members for a very lavish, expensive steak dinner where they celebrate the score against their rivals. There's video of that, and we're not showing that today, but that dinner was paid for in cash by Sheff G, celebrating the score that they had shot 6 people 2 days earlier. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about Michael Williams, a.k.a. Sheff G. He's a Brooklyn kid. He grew up in Flatbush. We believe he became gang involved at a very young age. He got some notoriety as a drill rapper early in his life. But by 2017, he really started to have, commercial success. He was really playing music that had been reached the masses. And as I've already said, he formed a record label with his friend. RCA Records bought that label, and obviously RCA Records is owned by Sony Music. He teamed up with Tegan Chambers, who's known as Sleepy Hollow, and their music is all over, Spotify and that. But I think the import here is that Sheff G is not a wannabe drill rapper. He is a legitimate person who made it good. He has gold records. He's made a lot of money. He rented a very large house. Some would dare call it a mansion in Short Hills, New Jersey, where he was staying. He has millions of monthly listeners and over 100 million views on social media, including on YouTube and Spotify. But instead of using his fame and his fortune for the betterment of himself and his family and those close to him, we allege that he used that fame and fortune to elevate gang violence in Brooklyn. We learned that Sheff G encouraged shootings, often by offering money or jewelry, by hosting extravagant affairs like the dinner we mentioned, and using rap songs to help hype up fellow gang members. We also have direct information that Sheff G had access to a large number of firearms and weapons, which we believe may have been used to further supply the gang with these deadly firearms. Most importantly, we also allege that he had direct and active involvement in some of these shootings. Let's see a photo that was captured from one of his phones. There you can see some of the photos that are in his cell phone. This is one of the cell phones that he had when he was arrested. Obviously, you see the AK-style rifles on top. There's some handguns. Down below, you see a number of brand new firearms in the case with the tags still on them, and also with other accessories like ammunition on the bottom. There are 2 photos in the middle of Michael Williams, Sheff G, holding and displaying guns. And then to your far right, with the black hoodie on and the Sheff gold chain, that's a video. Let's quickly, and there was a lot of these videos. We're just going to play one of them. Let's just show that video.
Niggas don't be outside like that, gang. Oh, what a big dutty. What a big dutty. Listen,
this was a direct taunt at one of his rivals. In the car with him in the back is Sleepy Hollow, the other rapper, and the guy Dekatu, who was charged with murder, the one who popped out of the Infinity sunroof. Now, the issue for us is why would someone of his stature continue to engage in this kind of violence? We're going to play a very short video of Sheff G buying a very expensive Jeep Cherokee. It's only relevant because that vehicle is later used in a shooting that we believe the evidence shows that he was directly responsible for. So let's play this video. This is posted on YouTube. That's Michael Williams, Sheff G. It's a very upscale Jeep Grand Cherokee. I think it's called a Trackhawk. So remember this video of this vehicle, because you're going to see it involved in the shooting that took place on April 6, 2021. What's important to know about this shooting is that a day before or 2 days before, Sheff G's home in Short Hills was attacked and it was shot up, and he believed, and the gang believed, that rivals were responsible for shooting his home up in New Jersey. Recovered text messages between Sheff G and a guy named Oliver Martinez, who's a fellow gang member, but also the boyfriend of his sister, Crystal Williams, surmised that one of their fellow gang members had betrayed them to give up Sheff G's secret house in Short Hills. And so there's a lot of conversation around getting revenge on the gang member who had betrayed them. And the gang, the A-Trays and 9-Ways, spent months trying to track this individual down for retribution for giving up his home. What you're going to see in this video is Michael Williams, who we allege is the driver of the vehicle, Tony Darden, and Oliver Martinez, and the other folk, Kendrick Austri. Those two men are first cousins to Michael Williams, Sheff G, and then, like I said, Oliver Martinez dates his sister. They're trying to get revenge on the person that they believe is responsible for giving up Sheff G's house in New Jersey. And when that house was shot up, there were family members in the home. And so what you're going to see is there's three guys there. They start to shoot up the block towards the top of the TV monitor. That white SUV you see on the right-hand corner is actually on the same side of the street that they're on. It's just there so you can see it. So it's further up the block towards the Checkers. And you'll see one victim get shot there, a 43-year-old woman, innocent bystander. Then up the block by the Checkers, there's a 53-year-old male who gets shot, completely innocent bystander. You'll then see the three men, after they engage in the shooting, run back to this Tomahawk Jeep that you just saw in the other video, and that car drive away. I can tell you right now that the license plates and the info GPS on the car puts it at the scene before, during, and after the shooting, and there's a lot of other evidence, including when the car is ultimately abandoned, evidence that we have that Sheff G gets an Uber back to Short Hills after this, directly connecting him as the the getaway driver. Plus there's other evidence, but let's play the video. Those are the three men. That's a woman who winds up getting shot, victim 1. And there's a guy right there, victim 2 by the checkers, who gets shot in his shoulder. The three men run. Again, all related to Sheff G. They get into that vehicle right here, which is the Jeep that we've been talking about. That Jeep takes off. A Jeep is followed. The police department do a great job in getting the video, following, getting license plates, doing everything they need to do. Gets on the highway. What I should say is that when they're shooting up the block, right there, if you know the neighborhood, the parade grounds is there, and there was a bunch of children playing soccer and scores of kids in the park who had to scatter from the shooting. Anyway, the Jeep takes off, and ultimately it's tracked into Manhattan, where it's ditched and ultimately recovered by the police department. I'll talk about this, what they believe this turncoat who gave up Sheff G's address. Ultimately, 10 members of the gang captured him one day, kidnapped him, drove him off to a cemetery in Brooklyn, and started to beat him to death. He was saved because some random person called 911 and the police responded. And video of the beating was captured. We're not going to show it because it's so graphic, but to say that he came within inches of his life is not an understatement. Those individuals were charged with kidnapping and assault. But the revenge went beyond this turncoat. They wanted to get revenge at the group they believe shot at Sheff G's house. That was this group called the Babies. You'll see a text message between Sheff G and his Oliver Martinez, which is the guy, again, who dates his sister, where they discuss targeting a rival ICG Babies gang member. Just the import of this is the exchange ends with Sheff saying, SNM, say no more. This gets done. I got 5K for you. Later the same day, the shooting takes place. Now, it's going to be hard to see the shooting, but I'll orient you. It's a white SUV. It's stolen. It's a man crossing the street. He's a rival gang member from the group that is involved, what they believe is involved in the shooting of Sheff G's house. That vehicle is stalking him, and as he starts to cross the street, that vehicle will make a left-hand turn. As they make the left-hand turn, you will not be able to see the shooting because the shooters are in the car, but he's shot 7 times point blank in his chest. Let's play the video. Right there, he's being hit by the gunshots. You can see him. He tries to run away, and ultimately, as he gets to that corner, he collapses. He was shot 7 times in the chest. He had multiple surgeries and was in the hospital for a really long time, for weeks upon weeks. He did survive this shooting, fortunately for him, and really fortunately for all of us. Sheff G is currently in jail on a unrelated gun charge. He was arrested by the police department, and inside one of his vehicles that he was driving at that time, inside a trap in the car, he had a .45 caliber handgun. He's pled guilty to that case, and he will now be arraigned on this new indictment. But his involvement with the gang didn't end while he was incarcerated. Tegan Chambers, among others, Tegan Chambers of Sleepy Hollow, continued to communicate with him and give him, information about the activity of the gang. In fact, the investigation showed that after Sheff G was arrested with the gun, he was very worried about what would be recovered from his cell phone, and he asked Tegan Chambers to wipe his phone to get rid of all of the data, including location data and financial data off his phone, which Tegan Chambers had agreed to do. I want to be clear, because we spent a lot of time talking about Sheff G. This is not an indictment about rap music. In fact, this investigation did not rely on a single lyric to prove any of the alleged crimes. But it is an indictment of how, when someone does well for themselves and could do real good in our community, they use their fame and they use their money to further gang violence. We believe that much of the violence perpetrated by this gang was made possible because Michael Williams had a lot of cash. And he promised members that if they put in the gang work, they would be rewarded, either financially or appear in some of his videos, or even get a record contract for themselves like Sleepy Hollow did. The very last slide that I'm going to show you, because for those who think these cases do not make a difference, this is a text message between Sheff G, Oliver Martinez, and other gang members revolving around a press conference that we had right in this very room just roughly 2 years ago. And there's a link to a YouTube. In that, they're talking about how one of their fellow gangs had been arrested and taken down. And they're talking about the dangers of using social media and apps to communicate and convey and to do gang business. And in this particular case, they're talking about they got the information off the Telegram application, meaning the police and the DA's office. I think that's a photo of me there. So these things do matter. These gang members do pay attention to these cases, and they're simply mistaken. So I'll make this clear. It doesn't matter which social media company you use or what apps you use. If you're engaging in street violence, if you're taking guns and you're shooting rivals, if you're hurting innocent bystanders, the NYPD will eventually track your case and bring you to the court of law. These individuals are being arraigned as we speak, and they will be held accountable, and they should expect long prison sentence. We surely will ask our judges to hold them accountable for what they did. Sheff G is looking at a minimum of 5 to 25 years for his involvement, as are many of the 32 members that were arrested today. And obviously anyone who was involved in the homicide is looking at a life sentence. So I want to be clear. Wiping your phone is not going to dissuade a prosecution. These cases take time, but we will ultimately solve these cases. I am confident that this will improve public safety. This crew continue to shoot at each other, and unless they're stopped, we know that the summer months are our hardest months for public safety and shootings. And so I am positive that this will have a measurable impact on public safety in Brooklyn, in particular in the Flatbush section, where many of these young men are from. The City of New York, under the mayor's leadership and the police department, Sewell, has continued to focus on shootings. And shootings are down. Shootings are down in our city, they're down in our county, and we will continue to fight this good fight. I want to thank the NYPD for working on this case. These cases are very complicated, they're pieced together, and very specifically the NYPD's Violence Reduction Task Force and the Gun Violence Suppression Division for putting this case together. For the ADAs in my office for about 2 years now. They've worked to piece these 13 shootings together to make sure that families get justice, that these crimes don't go unsolved, but most importantly, that we prevent future victimization.